स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अर्पयितामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भगवद्वेषिणी। नमोस्तुते व्यासविशालबुद्धे तुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रविग्रहपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला। अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदीं कैवर्तकः केशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थदन्तोत्कटम् नानाख्यानगकेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम्। लोके षड्जन षट्पदैरहरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। श्री परमात्मने नमः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ओम सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्।
Pronouns in the lotus feet of Lord, pronouns all the Mahatmas and devotees, pronouns all of you, pronouns to those who could not make it. We have got another 3 brilliant speakers today for the recap. And thanks for all of you who have made it. So we have got Jayantiji and then followed by Ramkrishnanji
and Balaji.
Niga Pudi, not Balaji ji, Balaji, and then Ramji will do the 15th chapter. So hope you have all listened to the last week's class because a lot of good recaps are going on. Yeah, go ahead.
So yaar gently ya. Idu vendama. Seri. So ana mic idla irukku. Yoga plus idayunde.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pranams to all of you. I'll be doing the 13th chapter. Thanks for the opportunity. I think once only when I started reading it, because before that, Raviji, if you remember, said that, when we started 13th chapter, it's a bit difficult, heavy. That time I thought it was very easy to understand. But when I started reading, then I realized so many things, so many questions came, and I really had to read through in detail to understand it. So it was very good exercise for me. So let me just start off, and I think so it was also easy with Meena ji and Kasi ji doing that 13th chapter. So today I thought I'll just do something is just talk about the concepts of Atma and Atma, and I would like to concentrate on the sloka number 3 a bit before I move on. Okay, so once again, just starting off with the introduction that, first 6 chapters, the Pratama Satkam, we saw about the nature of the Jiva and Karma Yoga predominantly, and the next 6 was nature of Ishvara and Upasana Yoga predominantly. So once a seeker has gone through these stages of understanding and sadhana, by gaining, of course, the 4-fold qualification, the discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire, so he of course becomes ready, he or she, I'll put both ways, becomes ready for the Jnana Yoga, which is basically, what is Jnana Yoga, is the recognition of the oneness of the Jiva and Ishvara. Okay, so in this Andima Shatkam, as we call it, and especially 13, 14, and 15 chapters, Bhagavan brings out the essence of the Upanishads. And we also saw that 13th chapter is one of the most important chapters, especially from a philosophical angle. So if you see, of course, once again, as in many other chapters, Arjuna starts asking for clarification for 6 technical terms from the Shastra: Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, and Jnaya. And we also saw that some terms are repetitive, so we are grouping them into 3 main groups. Kshetram and Prakriti, they both ultimately mean the same thing, which is Anatma. Then Kshetrajna, Purusha, and Jnayam. So these 3 words talk about ultimately the same principle. So we are grouping them and referring them in the general term Atma, which is Atma. Of course, we also saw that Atma we refer in the individual level, but in the totality we refer to as Brahman. But I think I'll use the word Atma here. And Jnanam here, it's a set of values one has to develop to get the Jnana. So let us start with Anatma, the easier thing, I think, to understand. So what is Anatma? So there are 2 aspects which I want to touch upon. First, what is Anatma? There Bhagavan says, whatever I can experience, that is whatever we can experience or objectify, is Anatma, to put it in simple terms. And then seeing the nature of Anatma, it is Achetana Swarupam, it is Jadam, it is full of attributes, and it is Savikaram in nature. That is an important thing because for us to understand Anatma, because it means it is subject to constant modifications, and that means it may not be visible all the time. So based on these 2, that is what is it and nature, we need to start negating. So what are the things which we can objectify? We start with the easier, where I think Bhagavan also first mentions the body because it's easy to identify. So the body, the pain and pleasures, of course, it's experience. So it is that one. The world is experienced. Then same way we can experience the mind, the thoughts coming into it, every emotions. Then intellect, because I know I'm using my brain, I'm making decisions, etc. Then, okay, that I think is certainly a little more clearer, we start thinking about. But now let us go to the next level of things like heavens, things which are not discovered yet, which are in potential form. So these also are objectifiable because maybe today it's not seen or known to us, but if I become Indra, for example, I'm certainly going to go there in the heavens and stay for some time. And same thing, any undiscovered things, these are all invented as it's all in potential form. So all these, once again, is objectifiable, so it comes under Anatma. Okay, so, and then we also saw that Maya is actually an unmanifest form of matter only. That is also importantly we need to reiterate ourselves, because these are some of the things, especially those which are not so obvious it's for us to think that that is also matter is important. And manifest matter is the universe and unmanifest is the Maya. Okay, so I think Anatma, we have, I think basically understood. Now going to Atma. Now trying to understand Atma is actually, it is relative, right? So
this Anatma is called Kshetra.
Kshetra.
Yeah,
No.
just to summarize.
Oh, okay.
Kshetra and the Prakriti.
Prakriti, yes. Yeah, I just mentioned, so yeah, Kshetra and
Summarize.
Yes. So Atma, now coming to Atma, as I said, Kshetrajna, Purusha or Neyam once again. So what we say is now having understood this Atma or Kshetra, or Prakriti, now we have to do it on a relative term. So if all these fall under the object of experience, whatever, right, the whole world, universe, we eliminated everything, heavens, etc., etc., then this presupposes the existence of an experiencer or a subject. Okay? And it is logical that without this experiencer, an object cannot be experienced. It's not possible. So all experience objects prove the existence of the experiencer, but the experiencer himself or herself cannot become an object of experience. I mean, of course, I had to really start thinking to explain this. So, and we really need to think a bit to come to this understanding, right? Because you are talking about experiencer, cannot becoming an object of experience, but at the same time, these things prove. It's more like logical conclusion. And this unobjectifiable experiencer principle is called Atma. So we saw two examples here, which I've noted down. So when we are seeing colors, different colors and forms in front of us, of course, we experience, this presupposes the existence of the eyes, but we cannot see our own eyes. And we have read before that, the mirror is where we can see our eyes, and Shastra, in a way, is a mirror to perceive Atma. Okay, so same thing. Another example is when people ask you, who is experiencing the world? Our answer is, I am experiencing. And now understanding that everything is Anatma, which I means we said it in not understanding the term, but ultimately that is right because the I is experiencing the world. The real I is the only one which can experience because all the others are objectifiable. And so before the Vedantic study, we were thinking, this I am the body. Okay. So after the study, the initial stage was to understand that the individual is a mixture of two things, consciousness and body. And then we added one more statement saying, I am the body. We still said I am the body, but inside me is the Atma. Okay. So now in this chapter, especially by Bhagavan explaining a few things, what we need to do is go to the next step. That is, so now we should start saying that instead of saying I'm the body with the Atma, we should learn to say I am the Atma with an incidental body. And I think that's what we are all trying to say. Manikantaji made a statement in this thing saying. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's better to start off on a lighter tone like this, but I think ultimately it will come, So as the body, so the next one is, so when we start saying that, then what happens is, corollary is, as the body is only an incidental medium, I'm willing to accept that this is the Kshetra, it has come from the world, I'm using it temporarily and it is going back to the world and it is going to merge with the 5 elements. So we give less importance to the whole Kshetra and the body. Then even when the medium is giving back to the world, I, the Kshetrajna, that is the invisible consciousness, will continue to survive. Okay? So these are the things now we need to start start thinking and practicing it. So basically, as Swamiji Paramatmanajaji said, I have to basically shift from have to am. So instead of I have the Atma, I'm just saying I'm the Atma. And that is actually the essence of the second verse of the 13th chapter. So this is called the Atma Anatma Viveka Jnanam. Okay, so discriminating between consciousness and matter and claiming I'm the consciousness principle who is functioning through the body, but I'm not the body. So that is the essence of it. And we also saw that consciousness, when we were talking about all these things and understanding consciousness, we also saw that it's not located in one brain, but all the brains are located in the consciousness. So basically, I think once again to reiterate is the shift of identification ultimately. And okay, so this once again, here comes the feature of consciousness. Maybe we can just read out consciousness. To reiterate, consciousness is not part product or property of the body. It's an independent entity which pervades and enlivens the body, is not limited by the boundaries of the body. Consciousness continues to exist even after the death of the body, and the surviving consciousness is not accessible because of the absence of the body medium. Okay, so understanding this, then Bhagavan, if you see further down in the chapter, is explaining further to explain the Chetana Tattvam of the Atma and the consciousness principle. He gives two beautiful examples, that is, and compares the same with the Akasha and the Prakasha. Akasha, if you see, it's more to explain the existence principle, and Prakasha is here it's the sunlight, not the sun, the consciousness principle. So all these, if you see, have ekam. So once again, this is also relative because we know that these are also matters. What we are trying to do is, because the consciousness or the Brahman or the Atma is not so perceivable, it is so difficult to understand because you cannot experience it. We are trying to understand through examples. And when we see, okay, so these two, Akasha and Prakasha, is ekam, it has oneness, which is also true for Atma. Then Achalam, it is immovable. So hands can move, we can move, but all these doesn't move. It's there. Then Akanda, indivisible. We saw the space is indivisible, this thing, but you cannot apportion. Asangam, unpollutable. Of course, it's never contaminated. And we also saw Shankaracharya says whether the light falls on whether the dirty river or good water or whatever, that doesn't polluted. It's still the same at the end of the day. And Sarvadharam, all supporting. It is the support of everything, both Akasha and Prakasha, same way the consciousness is. So it's not vice versa. So they support everything. So we now, of course, can come to the understanding is therefore it's all pervading. Vidyaha, it's Satyam, it is time and space unlimited, and whatever the limitations we are talking about belongs to the Kshetra or the body, which is the object of consciousness, not the consciousness. Okay, so now that's what. So the third shloka, once again we saw it's the very important shloka. The third shloka in this chapter, third or second depending on how we see it, is the important shloka, and it is called as the Mahavakya because Bhagavan reveals the Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Jnanam here. Okay, so there are two phrases. I would like to just read out this shloka. It's Kshetrajnam Chapimam Vidhi Sarva Kshetrekshu Bharata Kshetra Kshetrajna Yog Jnanam Yatat Jnanam Matam Mama. Okay, so in that I think two phrases are very important. Here says Kshetrajnam Mam Vidhi. There is no me to be the Paramatma, and then he elaborates as to where the Paramatma is by saying Sarva Kshetreshu Bharata, which is that the consciousness is there in all the bodies, everywhere, every body. And Bhagavan also says this knowledge regarding the Kshetra and Kshetrajna alone is the real knowledge. Okay, so we also, I think when we discussed, we saw that in Mundaka Upanishad also this knowledge is called the Paravidya, and everything else what we are studying, this Aparavidya. So just to elaborate on this shloka, as I said, because this I was struggling to understand a bit, and I thought whatever I understood I put together from, of course, reference is Paramartha Nanda's Ji and my notes. Yeah, of course. Yeah, what he gave, I have notes as well, so which was much more shrunk and summarized. So now that's what. So now having gone through, we have hopefully assimilated that we are the consciousness. We have to say you're not the body. We are just inside container. Body is just a container, and I'm the initial consciousness. So if we start looking as, okay, so that is clear. So I've started looking at myself as consciousness within my body. But then what about you? So the next question comes, how many consciousness are there? Because there are so many bodies. And here Bhagavan, what is he saying is that container bodies are many, but the consciousness, the Kshetrajna, the Atma within is the same in everything. And further, we also saw that, the Atma or Brahman is all pervading, right? Because it pervades everywhere. So the consciousness not only in the bodies, but is also in between. The only thing is, because the body is there, it is able to reflect, it is able to manifest the consciousness, whereas there is nothing to manifest. Okay? The mediums are not there. So, and the classic example is electricity and Wi-Fi nowadays, because it is not visible. So the medium, once the medium is there, it's there, but you can manifest, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And so consciousness, the next corollary or the point is that consciousness is different from matter and pervades all over. And matter, okay, that I think is only a medium for the expression of consciousness, which means that when matter goes away, and the matter goes away, the consciousness does not die, but what dies is the expression, because it doesn't have the medium to express itself. Okay, so the next step. So the next step I understood, or we understand from this, is that even though this consciousness is all pervading, okay, so it is known by two different names depending on the angle from which we see it. So when the consciousness is looked at from an individual body, on the microcosmic angle, it's Jivatma. When it is looked at from the totality, Samashti, or from the macrocosmic angle, the very same Atma is called Paramatma. So when we remove this macrocosmic and negate it, and then it is neither Jivatma or the Paramatma, it is just Atma. Okay, so the Jivatma and Paramatma are essentially the one and the same. And the equation which we are just talking about is to show the essential oneness. And we also saw that the equation is possible only when both are seen. They appear to be seemingly different, but at the end of the day, they are one and the same. Like in maths, 5 plus 2 is 7, and 9 minus 2 is also 7. So we do the equation only when two seemingly different, but ultimately the one and the same. So this recognition is called as the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, which is the essence here. And of course, in one class, we always talk about this example of wave, ocean, and water. Wave is limited, like Jivatma, short, this thing. Of course, the ocean is like Paramatma, but then ultimately everything is water. When you remove all these Jiva and Parama, is ultimately water or Atma. So here, very interesting. I mean, we have heard about it in Ramayana. I don't know whether it's there. I don't think it's there in the Valmiki Ramayana, but there is this thing like where Rama goes and asks Hanuman, "Who am I to you?" And I thought this was very interesting. But yeah, when I do, so Hanuman says to Rama, "When I do not know who I am, I serve you. And when I do know who I am you." So that's a nice way to put it. Okay, so that I think that is the third shloka. Now, of course, then Krishna goes to, then we are talking, now we'll go to the third, this thing, Jnanam. We finish Anatma, Atma, or Kshetrajna, and others, and Jnanam. And we saw already that here Jnanam has a unique meaning, and it refers to all the virtues or the Sadguna for getting the Atman Jnanam. And it's a dharmic way of life. It basically refers to the dharmic way of life. We also saw that this is where ethics and morality enter Vedanta, because that is one topic which normally people think, understand differently, and this is basis. It's a basis for it, or the zero step. So only a mind which has this ethics or morality or basic values can receive the Atmajnana. And without these, it is just an academic knowledge, and it is not going to transform my personality. I can read, I can understand, and explain perhaps. So value plus study is the transformation. It is transformation, but study without values is just an information. Okay, so, and these values alone are generally presented in the Shastras as the sadhana chatushtaya sampati, which Paramartha-ji calls it as 4 Ds. Discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire. That is vivekam, vairagyam, mumukshutvam, and sampati. So, I mean, I don't want to go into details on that. We know about it. And of course, mumukshutvam, I think that for me, I think that and the discipline is a bit, yeah, everything is difficult. So, anyway, so we try to follow it as much as possible. Yeah. Then Krishna, Bhagavan then, of course, closes the chapter by talking about the Jnana Sadhanani and Jnana Phala. Okay, Sadhanam, he presented the stages to attain the knowledge, Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Karma Yoga helps. How does it help? In Alanivritti or attaining purity, prepare the mind. Upasana Yoga, Viksheba Nivarti, remove the restlessness of the mind, make it more tranquil. Shravanam removes ignorance. Mananam, of course, after we comprehensively study, we can clarify them. Then, of course, Nididhyasanam is dwelling upon and final stage of assimilating. We also saw these are all like not cut. It's not like you go one from the other. It could overlap, because I think all of us are doing a little bit of trying to do karma as a yoga now after coming here. Upasana, Shravana, it's funny, we try to do everything, a combination of everything. And at the end of all these 5 levels of sadhana, I own up to this fact that Aham Nitya Chaitanya Rupa Atma Asmi. Then the phalam mentions the benefits. When you do all this, what happens? Sarvatra Samadarshanam, freedom from Raga Dvesha, which is the basic thing. I think that's very important, because that's what comes in first, right? Ego, Raga Dvesha, and all those things. Amritatva Prapti. So when you start identifying yourself as consciousness or the Atma and this thing, you are no more mortal. You really understand that you are immortal, that I is immortal. And then Akartatva, Abhoktatva Prapti. So you start seeing yourself as Akarta, Abhokta, and more as a witness. So in my presence, the matter is interacting. All the changes are for the matter or the kshetra. And I, the consciousness, I'm like the sunlight, illumine everything, but I'm not tainted by anything. And finally, of course, Brahmatvam or limitlessness. Once again, a wave. As a wave, I'm limited, but once I know I'm water, once again, I think it's similar to that immortal. I know I'm everywhere. And so, ultimate comprehensive benefit or effect of this knowledge is the Jivan Mukti, and therefore, Krishna, Bhagavan asked Arjuna to gain this knowledge, which will take him from the life of bondage, which is what Arjuna is struggling, to liberation. So, yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and just a little bit of takeaways when I went through after these, this journey is. Once again, I said where we are, we do a little bit of everything. Some of the things we have to continue to do bhakti in this material world, as long as we have to wish, because ultimately we also need to remember we have grahasthas, and we have to go through the transactional world where you cannot see, like, of course, going to that level is different, but transactional world, you do bhakti. And what has changed is the superstition, the fear has gone. I think all of us will agree on that. Reverence, thankfulness to the God. Try not to argue with others. It's very difficult, because especially, when you understand this, you feel that others, when they are doing something, you feel like going and telling them, but I know that you have to reduce this. And able to appreciate the Artha Bhakti, that is also difficult, but you understand that not everybody is in this path. And we see, sometimes it's good to also, even though all this is for ourselves, not to, check whether the others have got it. Sometimes it's easy to recognize certain behavior as jnanis, and more positively, like you understand some people, they behave that way, probably they are going through that. And of course, clarity on the goal roadmap and what I need to do. Thank you for the opportunity.
Ramkrishnanji,
Thanks to Lord, thanks to Gurus, thanks to all of you guys and to those who could make it here. So I'll first keep a timer. I don't want to run out of time.
That was a good time.
Yeah.
First speaker is okay. Chapter 13, we have more concessions. So I'm going to use Swamiji's wonderful summary, because I found that's the best way to do it. In chapter 13, the Lord talks about guna, and he says that starting with 13, he says that in 22nd, verse 22nd, he says, residing in Prakriti, the Purusha experiences gunas born of Prakriti, and attachment to the gunas is the cause of birth in superior and inferior worlds. So very clearly he is identifying that guna is one of the causes which leads us this samsara cycle and to be born again in whichever form it is. But guna is not a new topic. He way back, if you recollect 2.45, he talked about rise above the three gunas. Then in 3.5, he talked about that one cannot remain without activity. Gunas will compel you towards activity. And he continued in 3.27 and said that gunas is the one that causes all the action, but the person who is deluded looks at it and thinks that I am the doer. And 28, he contrasts and says that the wise person knows that he's away from it, he's not part of the gunas, and he can see it actually like a sakshi. So it's not a new topic. Throughout he's been giving us, but he never talked about what these gunas are. So now finally when we are coming to the 13, 14, 15, which is talking about jnanam, he said, now let me spend some time trying to tell you about the importance of gunas. And to highlight the importance very clearly, he said in chapter 13, that the gunas is the one which is going to make you be born again and enmeshed in this samsara cycle. That's why he begins and says that the only way that you can get liberation, I will teach you one more way. I mean, all along he's given different angles with which you can gain liberation. This is one more angle, which is looking at it from the perspective of gunas to say, I'll give you liberation. And that's how he starts off with 1 and 2. He says, I'll give you liberation. And in 3 and 4, he again reiterates that ultimately everything has come from me. Brahman, Prakriti comes from there, gunas come from Prakriti, so ultimately everything originates from me. That's why way back in chapter 7, in 13 and 14, he talked about the gunas, how they can delude you because of the Maya, and the only way to transcend is to cross. You will never understand Maya. That's what he. So gunas has been kind of giving it as an intriguing thing all along. He's kept us in suspense. So now he's coming to it. So what it is? I think all of us know what it is. But so there are lots of links to the previous chapters. And in 5th to 18th verse, he analyzes it. And Swamiji has given a wonderful chart. If you recollect, you see the book, he's given a chart which talks about it. So one way to know a subject is to define, to know what it is, to know what are the characteristics, how do you make out that this is so, what are the consequences, what can happen. And he has analyzed it to say consequences in this life, consequences in the afterlife. So all that is begin in one chart. So when you look at sattva, the definition is of the nature of brightness. So what differentiates sattva from others? One, it is bright. It has everything to do with knowledge. It is sukham. It is shantam. It is tranquil. So all these traits are a small definition of sattva. If you go to rajas, rajas is marked by activity, and the activity is caused by attachment. The raga comes in very clearly. So everything is based on a frenzied activity which comes from raga, which comes from Krishna, which comes from a lot of desire to be doing all these things. And when you come to tamas, it's the other way around. It's totally indolence, sloth, languor, sleepiness, and total ignorance. There is delusion and there is ignorance. So you're not able to proceed further. So if you want to know how do you distinguish and how you make out somebody's innocent. So within us, we have all three. We cannot escape. Like when you want to go to sleep, tamas is there. We need to have that. When you want to do something, rajas is there. And when you're doing this reading and all the savana manana, you need to have a lot of sattva so that we can absorb it and concentrate. So we need to have all three and we need to find a way to balance it. So how do you know in which mode we are? Because we would like to know that we want to know what mode we are so that we can improve on it. So the Lord says that the lingams or the sign of predominance is, if you are in sattva, then the jnanendriyas will be very powerful, the knowledge component will increase. That's why we see that in the morning Brahma Muhurta time, when we sit down and read, the absorption is much faster. Then if you're in, if you want to see the signs of rajas, you can see that there's a lot of increase in activities, increase in desire, activities which are led by the desires that come in. And if you want to see whether you're in tamas, there's a sense of indifference, apathy. You don't care what is happening. You're totally short. You just feel like leaving everything aside. So that's where tamas comes in. So the question is, the Lord says that all three of them are binding because they are from Prakriti. So they will bind you. Now how will they bind? Sattva will bind by causing attachment to the knowledge and to sukha. So when we are, no, we don't like to be disturbed, and we want to keep away when we are reading, we don't want any disturbance. We like to just focus on it. We may like solitude, so we don't like to get away, and then we just want to be in our little cocoon. So these are all signs of sattva. Then if you look at rajas, how would they bind? By causing attachment. We've been saying all along, the attachment is the one. Mamakara, ahamkara is the cause of all these things that is happening by tying us down. So rajas has a great hand in forcing us to tie us down and bind us. And if you look at tamas, by the delusion, the attachment to ignorance, we don't want to get enlightened. We want to remain in that mood and totally get deluded more and more, and it's a never-ending cycle. It drags us unless we do something to get out of it. So all three of them will dominate. So our goal is, like what Raviji was saying, at certain times we need certain gunas to dominate, because that's the activity that calls for it. So if you are in tamas, we can have tamas, like sleep, for example. But let there be a healthy dose of sattva also in it. For example, if you want to sleep, sleep peacefully. Don't sleep a lot of activities. Don't look at your mobiles or look at your iPad, because it's not considered good before you sleep. Read scriptures, listen to bhajan. So how do you bring in sattva even in the tamasic mode? Because we need the tamas for sleeping. Similarly, rajasic, how do you make sure that the desires are unselfish, which is nishkama? So we can bring in sattva. So the component of TSR, sattva, tamas backed by sattva, rajas, change to RST. And finally, SRT. So depending on the situation, we can decide which guna needs to come in. But always remember, it should be backed by sattva, because only then it will be dharmic. Then we looked at what happens. So what is the consequences of this binding? Everything has to have some consequences. Consequences can be twofold. One in this life, one in the afterlife. So in this life, if you are bound by sattva, you want too much of it, what will happen is, you will get a lot of punyam, because it will lead you to the higher regions. You will get a lot of jnanam, and you will get a lot of sukha. So there is a consequences, but because of the punyam, the karma bank is still there, so it causes rebirth again. If you look at rajas, it's a frenzied activity, a lot of things that you're doing, so it will lead to dukkham and lobha. The greed will increase. And finally, if you look at tamas, ajnanam, because you will never get out of it, the moha will be there, it will keep on dragging you inside. So this is what happens when you are actually living today. Now, what happens after you pass on? So in chapter 8, the Lord had already said that when you think of me at the time of dying, you'll come to me. But it's not easy, because you can't suddenly change a switch overnight and toggle and say you'll start thinking. So it has to be a process which needs to be done all along. So imagine somebody is in sattva, what will happen is they'll be born into the higher regions because they have accumulated a lot of punya. So punya takes them to higher region, but in the same chapter 8, the Lord also talked that even those regions are temporary. Ultimately, you will come down. Our goal of moksha is to get out of this rebirth cycle totally. So that will not help. So sattva, even though it is good, even though it causes peace, still bind you, because it will make you to be born again. What happens to rajas? Because rajas is we be born in the bhulogam, because bhulogam there is a mix of both sattva, rajas and guna. So you'll be born and you have one more opportunity to work on this. And if it is tamas, the Lord says you will be born to lower lokas. So it could be taking birth in different forms, lower forms than human beings, could be in different lokas. So all those things are the consequences. So from 5 all the way up to 18th verse, the Lord is saying these are the effects. So now that you know what sattva is, these are the effects. Then the Lord says that in 19th and 20, he says that you have to transcend this, and the only way you can transcend is knowledge. Because in the beginning he says that I'm going to teach you this knowledge. So he says the only way you can transcend these gunas is knowledge. Don't try to find any other way. So go. So because all around 13, 14, 15, we have been emphasizing all on jnana. Again, he repeats it here. And he says, what is that knowledge? The knowledge is that, like we talked about in chapter 20, Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So we have both, a mix of Purusha, but we identify ourselves more with Prakriti, with the Kshetra, others with Kshetrajna. As long as you identify with that, then you are helplessly tied down by the gunas, and all these things that we talked about will happen. So the minute you shift your identification and say, I am Brahmasmi, or you say that I am the Kshetrajna, then you get liberated, because then you become a Sakshi. You watch all this happening, but you're not bound by it. So that's what the knowledge is all about. Simple to say, but we need a lot more work to be done on it. Then Arjuna is curious. He says, Can somebody be like that? So the Lord says yes. So the transcending means what? Crossing across all three gunas, which is overriding all three. And Lord has already talked about it in Sthita Prajna in chapter 2. He talked about the Parama Bhakta in chapter 12. So it's nothing new. So if you look at Gunatita now, so the Lord says, okay, I will tell you what it is. So if you look at those, the attributes, very similar to all that. You make a chart, you will find everything is same. So what is he saying? Some of the things he's saying that he does not have, does not have the mamakara and hamkara. He's totally at samatvam. He's at ease, different depending on which situation you put him. Is at ease, and he's talking about the different kinds of situations. Honor, dishonor, whether it's a friend or a foe. So Guna Atita is somebody where in chapter 6 we talked about 6, 7, and 8, where he talked about different role models, and he says this is very similar to what it is. So this is what traits of a Guna Atita are. So if you recollect chapter 2 Sita Prajna, chapter 12 Parama Bhakta, and now this, you will find that there is a total similarity. So that becomes the role model, that becomes the sadhana.
One extra very important thing which is given here, which was not discussed in 2 and 12, is Nadveshti Sampravrittani Nanivuttani Kamshasi Dasina Vadasina Gunayana Vicharita. Sorry, Prakashamcha Pravrittimcha Mohamevacha Pandava Nadveshti Na Sampravrittani Kamshasi. Which is a very unique thing. So when the individual is in different moods, he is not bothered about it. That is something very beautifully
in 22.
Yeah,
20.
Now, because sometimes we'll be extrovert, sometimes we'll be introvert, sometimes we'll be tamasic. So we'll be exhibiting as an individual, even as a jnani. As a jnani, I'll be exhibiting all the three because when I'm living in this life, still as an individual, I'll be exhibiting that sattvam, rajas, and tamas, and they keep varying. But he clearly understands himself that he is not affected by this.
So he's indifferent.
He's indifferent and he's lost with come and go. Sometimes I may be moody a little bit. I may be angry a bit for some reasons. I may be a little lazy. If I am not having a sleep, I may be feeling sleepy. But he understands all these things are part of the body. When the knee is aching, when you are aching more, after all, it's a knee ache, no problem. So all these things will not, he will have udasina bhava. The udasina bhava is a very, very important, beautiful word, which is with respect to himself. That is the beautiful thing which is there. 22, 23 sloka is unique, which is not covered in the
It's very good. Which means that he knows I will have all these things, but he is not affected by it. Jnani. Very good, Ravi. Thank you. So that becomes like a checklist for us based on all these things that we've done. Then Arjuna also asked them how to be a Gunatita. Is there a sadhana that we need to do? And the Lord concludes by saying, Bhakti is the sadhana. If you look at the chart that Raviji had given long ago, the 5-step process, Bhakti is the foundation. We need it for Karma Yoga 1, Karma Yoga 2, Upasana 1, Upasana 2, and for Jnana. So the Lord again re-emphasizes that Bhakti is the sadhana that we need to do to achieve the goal. And in chapter 10, in 10.10, he had already said that how will it happen? So by having this Bhakti, he says that Dadami Aham Buddhi Yoga. So Swamiji interprets it as saying that I will enable things to happen in your life so that you will come across a guru and you will start furthering this process of Shravana Manana, Nididhyasana, the Jnana Yoga process. And that's how it happens. So if you full of, if you look at 9 and 10, there are lots and lots of verses which talk about how this bhakti is actually manifested in life. Like people gather, do kirtanas, do namaskaras, they talk about the Lord. So all these things are.
Two words you remember in this bhakti: Abhyavicharini bhakti, Ananya bhakti. So it's an important word. Bhakti is a very general term. Abhyavicharini means what? Without derailing yourself, single-pointed focus. And Ananya, nothing else is important. God is. That is there. Otherwise, in the 7th chapter term, it's called Jignasu bhakti. Because Artha is also bhakti. Here it is talking about the Jignasu bhakti. The Jignasu bhakti is nothing else is important for me. Then you have got that chinta, that thought of Lord in everything, whatever you approach, then Lord will make sure You will get knowledge by right guru, right place, and even our mind will be prepared to such an extent to receive the knowledge.
So Raviji, I always use 922. Ananyas Chintayantum Mam Vijanam Paripasate as an example that your mind is constantly in the Lord. You don't have to worry about your yoga kshema. So that is the example of Ananya Bhakti, like what Raviji is saying. Totally. So that kind of bhakti is the one that will help us to transcend these gunas and become a gunatita. And the bhakti, because of the process of as a sadhana, it makes him fit for becoming a gunatita by going through the process. So the ultimate goal is gunatita, and by gunatita, what will happen is he will gain moksha, which is what he ends with. Then we go on to chapter 15 to talk about it.
Gunatita is nothing but a Jivan Mukta.
Exactly. That's the process that takes us.
It's a Jivan Mukta. They are all already liberated now because we are hearing for the third time.
Yeah, that's about it. Thank you. So I found the summary very useful. I brought all the cross references in case I need to.
Yes.
All yours. Okay.
போதும் அவர்கிட்ட வாங்கிறது அது வேறு ஸ்ரீ குருப்யோ நமः. So I'm going to talk about this chapter 15. To start with, I would rather say that this is a kind of very profound chapter which has actually influenced me in the last couple of months ever since I started getting into each of these slokas. And I would rather say that it's a kind of a nectar, like how as we speak in the subsequent slokas as Somo Bhutva Rasatmaka. The chapters which start from 1 to 14, the condensation of the entire chapter from 1 to 14 is something which I have actually believed that it's part of this particular chapter. And it's my strong belief, my understanding that the sloka starting from number 1 to 7 essentially gives a broader perspective in terms of the various things which we talk about. Of course, while Brahman appearing as a Jagat is a different chapter, that just to illuminate in terms of how big is Brahman, how I essentially pervade in the entire universe. But to me, I thought that sloka number 1 to 7 is something which has stayed in my mind. And that's something which essentially splits entire aspect of your karma yoga, upasana yoga, as well as the jnana yoga. He puts it as subtle couple of words, which has been covered in chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 14. So let me get into those particular aspects. So here, Lord Krishna talks about the understanding of absolute reality, is Nirguna Brahman. And very profound chapter which essentially...
Volume.
Okay. A very profound chapter that unravels the various facets of Purusha. So essentially, after explaining Trigunas in chapter 14 and the need to transcend them to become Gunatita and strive to achieve the Lord or probably the moksha with unwavering bhakti, Yomam Abhyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate, and then attain the Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, Lord moves on to explaining the Uttama Purusha. So chapter broadly comprises and divided into following parts, whereby 1 to 2.5 he talks about the samsara definition, and 2.5 to 6 talks about sadhana to attain the liberation, and 6 about Brahma Lakshana, and 7 to 11 about Brahman appearing as Jiva, and 12 to 15 Brahman appearing as Jagat, 16 to 18 who is Uttama Purusha, and 19 to 20 glory about Uttama Purusha. And samsara definition, brilliant slokas. And in these slokas, to start with, Bhagavan says that he likens it to an Ashwatha tree, whereby the whose roots are the topmost, Udva Moolam, referring to higher lokas, branches below Adashakam, which essentially represent the world of human beings, inferior lokas for the beneath. The Vedas as leaves, Chandamsi Yasya Parnani, that establish the fruitive activities. So when I look at it as a figurative expression like a triangle, right, with higher lokas at the top and progressively going down, right? So which essentially start with the Purva Bhaga as Veda that leads to attainment of lokas. I would like to draw attention to previous sloka, given the fact that while I have been trying to constantly keep doing an RRE exercise, there were certain kind of slokas which I want to attach. Of course, Guruji will have that expert view whether I'm going the right path or not. So to start with, in say chapter 2 to 42 to 44, which says Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham. The reason why I basically say is that I don't want to start from a Uddha, which is that Uddha Moolam, because we are directly going attaching at the top. The question is that what is that which happens at the basic most level, which essentially makes us to go to the Udmurna, which is nothing but here Vedas has Chandamsi Asya Parnai. So where you go to 244, which says Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham Pravadanti Avipaschita Veda Vada Rata Pata Nanya Asti Iti Vadinaha. So people essentially get glorified by that outer external aspect of what Vedas say, and they essentially get kind of Devan Bhavayatanena as spoken in C 313, where you try to basically appease the Devas and Devas give it back. As a result of which, and again in chapter 2, if you see 4:12, Kangshanti Karmanam Siddhim Yajantaiha Devata Shipram Hi Manushaloke Siddhir Bhavati Karmaja. So people get entangled in this particular kind of this Purva Vaga of the Vedas, whereby the leaves essentially which are part of those particular branches, they basically are encircled in the same leaves again and again, and they keep going to the same Devas. And they bless you, you get attached to the material benefits, you basically keep springing. Now within that particular space, what happens is that it decides as to whether you basically go to an Urdhva Moolam or Adhashakram, which essentially is nothing but your 40 to 80, which is Udvam Gachanti Satvasta, Madhya Tishtati Rajasa, Jaganya Guna Vruddhasta, Ado Gachanti Tamasa. So depending upon the karmas which essentially do based on the leaves which is attached to the branch, it essentially decides whether I go to Udvam Moolam or Adhashakram. So now again the question is that does this essentially make me to go to the state of liberation? Answer is no. Nanya Gunebhya Kartaram Yada Trishtva Yado Anupashyati Gunebhyascha Gunebhyascha Paramveti Madbhava Adhigacchati. So for me to basically transcend to this particular level and become a Gunatita, and I need to understand that was Gunas is something which essentially acts on its own, and for me the pursuit is towards beyond the Gunas, right? And that essentially comes to the same thing of Udvolam Adhasakram. So effectively in Shloka 2.5, Bhagavan says that driven by the attachment towards the sense object, which is nothing but Vishaya Pravala, and nourished by what? The Gunas, Guna Praveta, the embodied Atma, which is Dehe Dehinam Avyayam, is entangled in the bondage of action, which is Karmanu Bandhini Manushaloke. So then Bhagavan goes on to say, the form of Ashwatha tree is such that it's not perceivable, because there is no Adi, na Anta, na Sampratishta. Ashwattham yenam suviruda moolam asanga sastrena dhridena chitva. So you require a massive kind of an weapon to essentially ensure that you basically move away from that particular level of detachment and go to the next level. And that's the way which you can kind of achieve the stated
goal. The first line of the third shloka, if you want to have a comparison, 7:13 you can refer as Tribhir Gunamayi Bhavehi Evi Sarva becomes Jagati Mohitam Na Anjanati. So that can be referred as the for that particular shloka. And for the samsara, from those shloka references you can give 5:22. Eisham Swasaja Bhogaha Dukka Yoni Yevate Adyanta Manta Konte Adyam and everything is what I'm reading. Exactly. Samsara in those shlokas, you go to the era of chapter Tadbhavat Alpam Edasa. Whatever you are getting, the limited one, everything is Alpam. So there are so many references in the past to the limitations of the asking for limited things, which is Alpam. And then that is what it is. Vyavasayatmika buddhi eke purnanda bhusha antascha buddha yoga vyavasayinam. So Anjar Shloka we can refer for getting the samsara.
Then I am going to talk about 2.5 to 5, which is sadhana to attain the liberation. So how to liberate? Having used Asanga Sastram, Bhagavan says one need to search and surrender. This Parimaragitavyam is such an important phrase whereby so much of slokas in the past chapters have been kind of condensed into one particular word, Parimaragitavyam, and Prapadya, surrender. So through the process of Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. So again, I am going to basically go into Karma, Upasana, and Jnana Yoga, few slokas, which is 248 again. Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangam Chatvaka Dhananjaya Siddhos Siddhos Me Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchate. And then you have in 390, which is Tasmad Asakta Satatam, without a sense of attachment. Tadatam Karyam Karma Samachara Asakto Hi Acharam Karma Param Apnoti Purushaha. So these are the initial steps to moksha. And one important sloka which I always like is the Brahmanadaya Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Karutya Lipyatena Sapapena Padma Patra Evam Pasana. So these essentially try to establish us to go into that particular path of Karma Yoga. And then of course comes the Upasana Yoga. That gives me Vairagya. Of course, there's this particular chapter in 3.2 where Arjuna says what are the different types of yoga. Our Guruji also came into a house. He said that there are only Taspin, we have only two. One is Sankhya Yoga and is Karma Yoga. Where does this Upasana Yoga comes into picture? Right? So that was one particular thing.
Yoga Upasana is a subset of Karma.
So you have the 630 which says that develop the bhava, yomam pasyati sarvatra sarvam chamai pasyati. So develop the bhava, and such person is always with me in the mind. And then comes the important phase of Jnana Yoga. A brilliant chapter in chapter 4 which says that it comes probably this Swadhyaya Jnana Yagyasya referred in chapter 428 under the guidance of the Guru. At a lengthy point in time. That with the pranipatena, pariprashnena sevaya, and more importantly, it doesn't stop with that Guru, because if you recall, there was the 4th step of learning process. 25%. There is the Subhashita Slokam, which essentially says that Guru gives you 25%, Satsang gives you 25%, Swadhyaya Pravachane, as we are reading in Sikshavali, gives you 25%, Kale Natmani Vindati, which is there in your 428 or 438. That yoga sansiddham kalenatmani vindati, that comes there, and that basically also gives you. These are the 4 steps of process, and that essentially gets you to your Jnana Yoga, right? And then you have this 517, and thanks to our Sivaranjini ji who gave me that particular Ranjini ji, Tadbudaya tadatmana tannishta tat parayana gacchantya punaravrittim jnana nirvuta kalmashaha. Brilliant. So essentially, to attain my goal, I need to basically have the composition of all these things to satisfy that I'm reaching in that particular path. Although I may be in this transactional world, I need to kind of translate myself to above the transactional world by trying to get into all these things. Now, by following the above, what happens? One tends to attain the abode of Adya Purusha, which once attained, one does not return back, from where the pravritim cycle of birth and death has emerged. So now Bhagavan says an Amuda who is free from duality, Dvandar Vimukta, Sukadukka Sangha, Jita Sangha Dosha, or Nirmana Moha, he attains the abode of Abhyaya. So now what's Brahma Lakshana? The Brahman being.
Amuda exercise
Aja separate. Ipo apa ning armandan kodukon. Palana, naane oru Amudana ukkandu. Adhu appa enna ungalku? Photo puchi nalla thonga podunga. Okay. So, Brahman being an Aprameya is unaffected by Surya, Chandra, our fire, and who reaches does not return. Tadhama Paramam Mava, as Radhika ji explained also in 821, right? The same reference also. My favorite one is this one, which is coming at 7. Brahman appearing as Jiva, right? Defines the very essence of the conscious people. I am highly influenced and moved by this particular sloka, especially because after the fact that when Guruji explained some few months back about this mirror kind of a status, more than mirror, I look at it, Mama eva amsya jiva loke jiva bhute sanatana manastastani indriyani prakritim stani karishyati. Lord says, I am only reflecting as conscious in every being. The beauty of that particular eva is so important that only is something which I would like to stress. That I am only reflecting. Mameva. Right? There he essentially says that I am the Chaitanya. I am the Chit, Brahman, reflecting as Chidabhasa, which is reflection of Chid into the Jivatma, which is mind sentiency, which dwells in the Aram, which is your reflecting medium, which is the body. So OC is equal to your RC plus Aram. I just took one interesting view out there. When I was trying to essentially look at it, he says that instead of saying I'm only reflecting, I took it as I'm only reflecting. I'm part of you, but you stand apart from Brahman. So due to what? Due to the layers of the gunas besieging the Jivatma. Now, when I look at this part and apart and take away the T, okay, you can see par and apart. So, which technically in a very Sanskritic kind of a version is like para apara. Right? So, this essentially was sticking on to me to see in terms of how it essentially comes, right? So, I am part of the Brahman, but because of the gunas which essentially covers my Jivatma, I am apart from the Brahman. Right? So, that's something which essentially came. And of course, I'm going to now rush because to me, I really thought the first of the 8th is something which I really believe that is the essence. So of course, post Utkramantam of Ishvara, which is the Lord of the body, the senses abandon one's body and gets a new body carrying the senses, like Vayu Gandha Nivasayat. What is the moot point which I want to highlight is that due to the layers of the gunas embodying the Asi, Jivatma, Dehi, Dehinam Abhyam, the Asi keeps moving from one body to another body, carrying the senses, leading to perpetual cycle of birth and death. And of course, as Swami Ramkrishnanji puts, consciousness continues to exist even after the death of the body. So now 9 to 11 is more talking about the sense objects, hearing, touch, taste, smell. Jiva experiences the objects. The gunas.
The sadhana, Mukhyamana line, if you have noted down, 10th shloka, the second line.
Muda nanu pasyanti jnana chakshusha.
Because this is a very pivotal shloka, the jnana chakshu. I mean, this is only an understanding. This is not the becoming Brahman, lagachante, lavante. All those things are again negated here by only they are all figurative expressions. And here the Vimudaha means a sadhana chaturshya sampannaha. A person who is having a clear, prepared knowledge, prepared mind, pashyanti through jnana chakshu. It's only an understanding. This is a very, very important thing.
Correct. So I go to Sloka 11, which essentially is Kritatman Achetasaha, an impure mind.
An impure mind cannot achieve. Very clearly meditated.
While a striving yoginaha, yatanto yoginaha can perceive the Jivatma within themselves. 12 to 15, Brahman appearing as Jagat. Krishna explains as Brahman appearing as Jagat and an illuminating force in various forms, which is Tejo of Surya, Chandra, Agni, sustaining all living beings by infusing potency, Gama Vishyate Bhutani, nourishing the plant by being a nectar-filled moon, Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha, as fire of digestion, Vaishwanaro Bhutva, digesting 4 types of foods, Pachami, Annam, Chaturvidam.
So we are all doing Pranagnihotra every day. What is Pranagnihotra?
Sapadi. Situated in hearts of living entities and being the soul of Smriti, Jnanam and Apohanam. And known by all Vedas and the knower of Vedas, Vedantakrit, Vedavit, Aham Evacha. Now who is
only has to be known? That's what Veda says. Very clearly.
And on 16 to 18, he dwells on who is Uttama Purusha. Dvavimo Purusho Loke. There are 2 types of entities, which is Shara and Akshara. All beings are called Ksharaha, while Prakriti, Maya, Shakti represent Akshara. Besides this, there also exists a superior Akshara known as Paramatma, the Ishvara controller, who enters and controls the world. Yo Lokatrayam Avishya Vibharti Yavya Ishvara. I would like to draw attention to also Shloka 4-6. Ajo apisan avyayatma Ishvaro bhutanam apisan Prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavami atmamaya. So that when I draw that particular reference to here, he says that Ajo apisan avyayatma, I am unborn. I am the control of human beings, which also he refers here. And at the same time, as a result of my Prakritim, I essentially sambhavami through my Atmamaya. So where he essentially says that Atmamaya, he talks about that Madhyama Prakriti which Guruji says, Akshara. So since
the Akshara of this section can be referred to 20th sloka of the 8th chapter. Another Parastasmat Bhavonyo Yakto Vyakta Sanatana. And the Vyakta Avyakta. There is something beyond that Vyakta Avyakta. We call it as Avyakta 1 and Avyakta 2. We explain it that way. That is what it is. Akshara, Akshara 2.
Avyaktaini Bhutani Yakto Madhyani Bharata. Adiyum sollalle?
Yeah, அது வந்து
manifesting that. Okay.
So then he says, since I transcend both Shara and Akshara, hence I am known as Purushottama. And finally he says, Uttama Purusha. Glory of Uttama Purusha, Jnana. And Asammuda who understand that I am Purushottama will be fully engaged onto me, Arjuna. And Bhagavan in saying, Arjuna, I have revealed you the most confidential secret of Shastra. Bhukhyatamam Shastram idam mukta mayanaga yetad buddha buddhimansya kritakritascha bharada. An intelligent person who is fully entitled by this knowledge will be dwelling on me. Arjuna, na solradana solliten magane un samathe. Kritascha bharada.
He has accomplished everything.
Correct.
He does not need not have any other accomplishment. And the word you can go back to third chapter. You can, if you want to go. Word you can go back to the previous chapters. And where this record concentrating can always.
Hari Om.
Very good.
हमको अलग अलग से